What's up guys? Today I'm in Baku of all places. The Grand Prix is actually happening in China right now and I'm in Baku, the venue of the next Grand Prix. I know that's a bit weird, but I'm not here for Formula One specifically, although what I am doing is talking about Formula One as ever. Today, talking to a massive pharmaceutical organisation about teamwork and about how every single member of any team genuinely can change the outcome of whatever the end event is or the end goal is. The theme for today's conference is Together We Make a Difference, and that couldn't really be more perfect. See, the important thing about being part of a team, any team, whether that's a sports team, a business, any kind of organisation, even a family unit, is a team, isn't it? The important thing about that is understanding where you fit into that team, what your role in that team can do to the eventual outcome, to the end goal. If you're part of a football team, for example, you're playing goal for a football team, it's pretty obvious what a large bulk of your contribution to that team is. You're trying to stop goals going in. If you're a striker, you're trying to score goals. The outcome of your contribution is pretty obvious to the overall end goal of that team. Obviously there's more to that you can contribute far more than the on-pitch stuff, but on basic terms that's fairly tangible, isn't it, as your contribution. But in some organisations, particularly if it's a big organisation, if you've got thousands of people in your team, in your organisation, and this kind of falls into the category of Formula One as well, then sometimes it's not that easy to appreciate what your role could be doing for the end product or the end goal. If you're a cleaner or if you're part of the catering staff in a Formula One team, how on earth can that possibly contribute to the end result of one of the world's biggest sporting events? But the truth is it can. Take the guy who just bought me my coffee, for example, at breakfast. I imagine a pretty low paid job. I'm probably on minimum wage, probably does a lot of hours for not a lot of financial recompense in return. But he brought me my coffee with a massive smile on his face. He engaged in conversation, he was happy, he was jokey, he made me feel comfortable, made me feel good, and to start my day in the best possible way. And that's a tiny little detail. But for me, it made a big difference because I'm in this place, I'm in Baku, in a hotel I've never been in before, I'm around, nobody that I know, I'm on my own here. Yeah, he made me feel utterly relaxed and comfortable. And therefore my impression of this hotel and this team, this organisation, is suddenly given a boost. Suddenly I feel like, yeah, this is a nice place. This is a place I'd like to come back to. So for his team, he's just made a big difference. By the way, preparations very much underway here in Baku for the Grand Prix. As you'd expect, 2 weeks away, but the circuit's pretty much built, the roads are all closed. Last night the taxi driver was showing me his frustration at the fact the roads are closed, but things are definitely happening. If you think about your family unit as a team, you must know that your mood, the way you behave as a kid or as a parent can totally affect the family dynamic, that can affect the happiness of your little family team. If your kid's playing up as a parent, you get down, you get annoyed. If their kid's upset, you get upset. And equally, if you're a kid and your parents are arguing or fighting or stressed out, it has a massive impact on the rest of that family, so it affects your family unit. The same thing happens in a Formula One team, because one of the things that I'll be talking about today, and I talk about a lot, is that, take the example of McLaren, where the thing about McLaren under the Ron Dennis years was that the attention to detail was, second to none. It was forensic levels of attention to detail, and it ran all the way through the entire organisation. And by that I mean, when I referred back to the guy sweeping the floor or making the tea, if you think about that McLaren Technology Centre and how impressive it is, you cannot help but open the doors of that place and be wowed by what you see. Part of that wow moment comes from the fact that there's a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week cleaning team constantly running around that place, polishing things, sweeping things away, making sure that it always looks immaculate. And it's very deliberate. That immaculate appearance is the first impression for lots of people, possibly investors in the team, clients, customers, people going to think about buying a McLaren road car. That first impression is absolutely crucial because it gives those people an impression of absolute professionalism and outright attention to detail running through the organisation. And actually, no matter what might be happening on the racetrack at any given time, if that's your first impression of that organisation, that can really form the opinion of those who may be potentially wanting to invest or join that team as a partner or as some kind of sponsor or anything else. So absolutely those people make a difference. Just like the guy who bought me my coffee this morning. If somebody brings you a coffee in the McLaren Technology Centre with a smile, that coffee has a little McLaren logo on the top, perfectly arranged on the top of the coffee foam. It makes a difference. Those are the memories that you go away from MTC with. And because you go away with those memories, that's constantly etched into your memory, into your mind, of your impression of the McLaren organisation. Same at the racetrack. The garage is always immaculate, the cars are always immaculate, the personnel are always immaculate. Ron Dennis, that was one of his most important things. So no matter who you are, no matter whether you're designing the car or whether you're cleaning the factory, you can have an impact. Because if that impact and that wow moment and that first impression means that that person or that organisation invests into the McLaren team, well, it brings financial stability. And financial stability, as we all know, can bring performance to the car. So yes, you can affect the outcome of one of the world's biggest sporting events by being a cleaner or a part of the catering staff at the McLaren organisation, or any other organisation for that matter. Right, so I've done the speech and it went down really well, and one of the things I always talk about in these kind of situations is how a pit stop, using a pit stop as a kind of analogy for this kind of thing, and that the only way you get the perfect pit stop is by every single person and every single piece of equipment and all the process and kind of planning and preparation, everything that goes into it has to come right at exactly the right moment. And the only way that happens is through meticulous attention to detail, meaning that every single thing that happens has to be perfect for the overall end result to be a positive one. And I always talk about my first ever pit stop. I think I've talked about this before. My first ever pit stop at McLaren, my job was to put on the nose cone, spare nose and front wing assembly, which is a rare thing, hardly ever happens. And I was given that role, that rare role, because I was inexperienced and new to the whole thing at that point. I remember being terrified going into that first pit stop, something that I dreamt about doing for years, and yet when it happened I was terrified. And I remember going through a practice situation on the Wednesday where everything was going wrong. It was a horrendous practice. I was dropping the nose, I was missing the pins on the front of the chassis, I was tripping over, clattering into the guy taking the old nose off. Everything that could have gone wrong was going wrong. It was horrific. And then I get to Sunday and the race, kind of hoping by that point that it just wouldn't happen, because I was so scared. And of course on the very first lap of that particular Melbourne Australia Grand Prix, it was Kimi had an accident at the first corner, knocked his nose off, and we're into a first lap pit stop, and I remember it being horrendous. My bit in the pit stop went perfectly well, and was the best I'd done of all the practices. It was definitely the best pit stop I'd ever achieved in that situation. But the overall pit stop was a disaster, because Kimi had when he went into the gravel trap, a tiny stone had leapt up and gone down between his back and the seat, which made it so painful he couldn't continue, and he can't obviously reach to get it out. So there were about 15 people clambering over this thing trying to fish out this one little stone. I reckon the whole pit stop lasted about a minute. Disaster. And yet when everyone then came back into the garage, there was this cheeky young idiot with a great big grin on his face just leaping around wanting to high-five everybody because his little bit had gone really well. And it kind of changed my focus, my outlook on that process of a pit stop from that day forward, and that my little bit in that was a tiny, tiny little bit. It was a crucial bit. I could have easily made that pit stop a disaster all by myself, and luckily I didn't. But I was never going to make it the perfect pit stop by myself either, because the only way that happens is when everything and everybody works perfectly together and at the right time to get the perfect outcome. And that's kind of what we're talking about today. It's about this teamwork and the idea of no matter who you are, you can make a difference. And it takes every single person to make that difference to get the positive outcome, no matter which part of the process you're in. So I just think it's a really important message, not just in Formula One, not even just in business, which is what I'm here to talk about specifically, but actually just in life. If you want to do something well, if you want a positive outcome, you need every part of that process, whether that's human or technical or the procedures that you use. everything has to go as well as it can be done. And the only way that happens, as I said before, is through meticulous planning and preparation. And that, I guess, is the message of this video, is that no matter what you're trying to achieve, no matter what it is you're doing, what seemingly innocuous task you have to do today, or whether you're at work and you're part of a team and you sit down at a computer when you get in the morning and you open up and you've got this horrendous list of emails, or whatever it might be, whatever tasks you've got lying ahead of you for any given day, just do them to the best of your ability. Because actually there's a positive kind of reaction in yourself when you do something well. You start to feel a little bit better about yourself, you start to feel a bit better about the things that you're doing. But the impact it has on everyone else, on your team and the people around you, and the end goal or the end product, the mission, can be quite, a lot bigger than people often realise. To go back to that football analogy, if you're a goalkeeper or a striker, the obvious difference you can make is by saving goals or scoring them, but actually there's an even bigger impact you can have, which is just about an air of positivity around your team, inspiring the rest of your team by stepping up, by working harder than everybody else, by doing everything to the absolute best of your ability. You'd be amazed at the impact that has on the people around you, and that's not just if you're a leader, as in your job title says you're a leader. Anybody in any team can be a leader by stepping up and inspiring people through their own actions. And I think that's probably one of the most important messages that I've been trying to portray today to these people here. I just think is actually quite relevant in whatever it is you're doing. Anyway, that's my preaching over for now. I'm about to go and get changed and go for a run around the F1 track here in Baku, which you will be able to see in a different video at some point very soon, I hope.